In 1953, the CIA overthrew a democratically elected government for the first time in its history. The target wasn't a communist dictator or a terrorist regime. It was a democracy that dared to nationalize its own oil. This operation became the template for every regime change that followed, from Guatemala to Iraq to Libya. And it all started because British Petroleum wanted to keep stealing Iran's oil. In this video, I'll reveal how a British oil company convinced America to destroy Iranian democracy by analyzing the CIA's own declassified files. By the end, you'll understand why Iran and America are still enemies 70 years later. In 1953, Iran was a democracy. Mohammad Mossadegh had been democratically elected as prime minister, and he had done something that terrified the British Empire. He nationalized Iran's oil industry. For 50 years, the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company, now known as British Petroleum or BP, had been extracting Iran's oil and giving Iran only 16% of the profits. Imagine if a foreign company controlled all of America's oil and kept 84% of the money. But here's what makes this story dangerous. The CIA's own documents prove that this wasn't about fighting communism or protecting democracy. It was about oil profits, and the operation they created became the blueprint for every American regime change that followed. Today, as tensions with Iran reach a breaking point, understanding this coup is the key to understanding why Iran calls America the Great Satan and why they might actually have a point. Tim Weiner spent 20 years investigating the CIA for the New York Times. He won the Pulitzer Prize for exposing military secrets, and he had access to over 50,000 classified documents that reveal exactly how this coup happened. This is Legacy of Ashes by Tim Weiner, the definitive history of the CIA based entirely on declassified documents and interviews with 10 CIA directors. The first thing Weiner's documents reveal is something that completely changes how you see American foreign policy, and it's something the CIA has been hiding for 70 years. Understanding this is crucial because this operation created the template that America has used in every regime change since. From Guatemala in 1954 to Iraq in 2003 to Libya in 2011.
And the world faced a choice. Gaddafi declared he would show no mercy to his own people. He compared them to rats and threatened to go door to door to inflict punishment.
It was Muammar Gaddafi, Obama said, who was the main reason for war. He was about to launch a massacre of his own people.
It was not in our national interest to let that happen. I refused to let that happen.
And so the attack began. One question has hovered over this mission. How is it in the strategic interests of the United States to go to war in Libya?
Weiner discovered through declassified CIA cables that Operation Ajax wasn't about stopping communism. It was about oil money. British Petroleum was losing $2 billion a year in today's money because Iran had nationalized its oil industry. You can see this exact pattern in Iraq, where American oil companies got massive contracts after Saddam was removed. In Libya, where Western oil companies rushed in after Gaddafi fell. The playbook never changed. In the summer of 1953, CIA operative Kermit Roosevelt, Teddy Roosevelt's grandson, was sitting in a safe house in Tehran with $75,000 in cash. He was about to bribe Iranian generals to overthrow their own government. As he later wrote in his memoir, "I was about to change the course of Iranian history with a suitcase full of money. That suitcase contained more than just cash. It contained the future of American foreign policy." The operation was called Ajax, and it was designed by the British Secret Intelligence Service. But Britain couldn't do it alone. They needed American muscle and American money. So they told the Americans that Mossadegh was a communist threat. This was a lie. Mossadegh was a nationalist who wanted Iran to control its own resources. But in 1953, calling someone a communist was enough to get the CIA's attention.
This is the third of 3 films in which I have been talking to you about communism and socialism. In this one, I'm going to answer the question that is often asked me, what can we do about it? Well, as the title background you just saw suggest, if we are going to you. Now, I say that because so many good people say to me, well, I'm just an ordinary person living an ordinary life. I don't even know any communists. What we can do. The first important thing you can do is to be sure you know what communism really is and how socialism ties in with it.
The British presented a plan: bribe Iranian generals, pay off newspaper editors, organize fake protests, and install a puppet ruler who would give the oil back to British Petroleum. President Eisenhower approved the operation in July 1953. The CIA allocated $1 million, about $10 million in today's money, to buy an entire government. On August 19, 1953, the coup began. CIA-paid mobs filled the streets of Tehran. Tanks surrounded government buildings. By evening, Mossadegh was under arrest and the Shah was back in power. The CIA celebrated. They had overthrown a government for less than the cost of a single fighter jet. Operation Ajax was declared a complete success. But the Iran coup was based on something even more fundamental, a philosophy that would justify American intervention anywhere in the world. This philosophical framework matters because it's still being used today to justify military interventions and regime changes across the globe. The CIA developed what they called the domino theory, the idea that any country that nationalized its resources or chose economic independence was automatically a communist threat. Mossadegh wasn't a communist. He was a nationalist who wanted Iran to control its own oil. But that was enough to mark him for removal. This translates into modern American foreign policy, where any leader who doesn't align with American economic interests gets labeled as a threat to democracy. We saw this with Chavez in Venezuela, Assad in Syria, and even Gaddafi in Libya. Leaders who controlled their own resources became automatic enemies. The CIA created a simple formula: economic nationalism equals communism equals threat to America equals regime change required. This wasn't about ideology, it was about control. Any country that tried to control its own resources was a threat to American corporate interests. After Iran, the CIA used the same playbook in Guatemala in 1954. The United Fruit Company wanted to keep exploiting Guatemalan workers, so they convinced the CIA that President Arbenz was a communist. The pattern repeated in Chile in 1973, where ITT Corporation and other American companies wanted Salvador Allende removed because he was nationalizing industries. Every time the justification was fighting communism. Every time the real reason was protecting corporate profits. The Iran operation proved that democracy was no protection against American intervention. In fact, democratic governments were often more dangerous because they actually represented their people's interests. Now, here's where it gets really scary. The Iran coup of 1953 is still shaping American foreign policy today, and most people have no idea. This matters because the current crisis with Iran, the nuclear program, the sanctions, the threats of war, all trace back to this single CIA operation 70 years ago. Weiner's documents show that the CIA knew the coup would create long-term anti-American sentiment in Iran. A 1954 CIA assessment warned that the Iranian people will eventually turn against any government installed by foreign powers. They were right. The Shah that the CIA installed became one of the most brutal dictators in the Middle East.
In other words, you're saying you do what every country does.
Sure.
If torture is necessary, you torture.
Not the torture in the old sense of torturing people, twisting their arms and doing this and that. But there are intelligent ways of questioning now.
Well, they talk about psychological and physical torture.
Physical, I don't believe.
I talked
Not anymore. Maybe in the old days, maybe.
I talked just today to a man whom I believe, who told about torture.
He was tortured?
Yes.
And you believe that he was tortured?
Yes.
How many years ago?
Within, I want to be very careful, not yesterday.
Ah, well, maybe. I don't know.
The word has gone out to stop it.
To stop what?
Torture.
But a long time ago, yes.
How long ago?
Well, I won't tell you, as you don't tell me.
His secret police, the SAVAK, tortured and murdered thousands of Iranians. When Iranians finally rose up in 1979, they didn't just overthrow the Shah, they overthrew everything associated with America. The Islamic Revolution was as much about rejecting American control as it was about religion. Look at Iran today. They call America the Great Satan, not because of ideology, but because of history. The 1979 Islamic Revolution happened because the Shah that the CIA installed became a brutal dictator. The hostage crisis, the Iran-Iraq war, the nuclear program, all of it traces back to 1953. When Iran's leaders say they can't trust America, they're not being paranoid. They're being historical. Every Iranian leader since 1979 has used the 1953 coup as justification for their anti-American policies. And they have a point. America did destroy their democracy. The nuclear program that America is so worried about, Iran started it because they learned they couldn't trust anyone else to protect them. The regional influence that America complains about, Iran built it because they learned that weakness invites intervention, the support for proxy groups across the Middle East. Iran learned from America that if you want to influence other countries, you work through local allies. Iran became everything America feared because America taught them how to survive in a world where superpowers overthrow governments they don't like. The current standoff with Iran isn't about nuclear weapons or terrorism. It's about the consequences of a decision made 70 years ago to prioritize oil profits over democracy. And here's the most disturbing part. The same people who planned the Iran coup went on to plan operations in Guatemala, Chile, Nicaragua, and dozens of other countries. Kermit Roosevelt became a consultant for oil companies. Allen Dulles became CIA director and oversaw regime changes across Latin America. The Iran coup made their careers. They learned that overthrowing governments was easy, profitable, and had no consequences for them personally. So they kept doing it. So what does this all mean? Weiner showed us that the Iran coup wasn't about fighting communism. It was about protecting British oil profits. It wasn't about spreading democracy. It was about destroying it. And it wasn't a one-time operation. It became the template for American foreign policy. This connects to every conspiracy theory about American imperialism because, in this case, the conspiracy theories are true. The CIA's own documents prove that they overthrew a democracy to protect corporate profits. The reason this story is still classified in many details is because it reveals the real motivation behind American foreign policy. Not democracy, not freedom, not fighting communism, but economic control. Understanding this changes everything about how you see American interventions. Every time you hear about spreading democracy or fighting terrorism, remember Iran 1953. Remember that the CIA's first regime change was against a democracy, not a dictatorship. If Weiner is right, and the documents prove he is, then we can expect more of the same. Any country that tries to control its own resources, any leader who puts national interests above American corporate interests, becomes a target. The playbook hasn't changed in 70 years. So the CIA overthrew Iranian democracy in 1953 to protect British oil profits, and we're still dealing with the consequences today. If that isn't proof that American foreign policy is driven by corporate interests rather than democratic values, I don't know what is. What do you think? Have you seen this same pattern in other American interventions? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one. And if you want to dive deeper into how the CIA created its own enemies, I'll be analyzing their operations in Guatemala next week, another democracy destroyed for corporate profits. Subscribe if you want to understand the books that reveal the real history of American power.